Imagine you have a stone in your shoe, right? And you know how irritating it is?
Yeah.
And what we do is we just take out the shoe, right? Imagine you're not able to do that for the rest of your life. That's how uncomfortable it is having gender dysphoria.
Hello and welcome to another episode of YanaTV. Today we have a really unusual and very colorful guest, the abundant Riley. She is the aviator, the facilitator, nomad, also a business owner, and she travels around Asia and inspires other people to live life on their terms. The abundant Riley. I love the name. Thank you for being on the show, Riley.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
Tell me about the name. How did it come up with the abundant Riley?
Wow, so in the past, I was known as the Lobang King or Lobang Queen. So the word abundant actually came from a very interesting story from this author, Don McGill. He talks about this story called The Magical Kitchen. So the Magical Kitchen is basically one day, there's this very poor woman on the side of the street and she's in the cold, she is hungry for so long, and this guy comes up and says, "Hey, will you want to have some pizza?" Right? In exchange for that, you need to do anything I say.
Sounds tempting.
So at that very desperate moment, she has to agree to that, right? So that's part one of that story. And then part two of the story is now this woman is in a very beautiful mansion, and she has this thing called the magical kitchen that she can wish for anything she wants in life in terms of food. Particularly, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this same pizza guy came up to the door and is like, knock, 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 right? It's like, hey, do you want some pizza, right? In exchange, you got to do anything I say. But he doesn't know about this magical kitchen.
Yes.
Okay. So of course she's like laughing and smiling. She's like, you know what? It's okay. But why not come in and have anything you want from the magical kitchen? And so the analogy of that whole story is that this is a description of unconditional love. A lot of times, sometimes we just want something from someone, and because we think we have a lack of or scarcity mindset, we aren't able to receive. And that's something I've struggled for a very long time to receive from people until I understand. When I read this story from the book, I'm like, oh wow, when we actually have an abundance of something, for me, it's knowledge, right? And I give, I don't need anything in return. So, for me, it's when I share on my Instagram or my socials, it's really about all this knowledge, all these opportunities, and I don't need anything in return. And I feel so happy. Just like in the story, this person gives, whatever food you want. Yeah. She's very happy as well. So that's how the Abundant Riley came about, this name.
I love that. I love that. This is a great story. But I'm wondering how Riley came about the way you are today.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the journey. So when did it start? How did that happen? How did you do that?
Yeah, so for the name Riley, so Riley is the chosen name I gave myself.
Okay.
It has become legal.
Yeah.
And if one were to look up the name Riley, which I didn't know, what it was something to do with courageous. Very courageous.
Yeah, very courageous.
And it kind of represents my whole journey, as a trans person, by definition. It's really like, wow, I have to go through so many different challenges and boundaries, challenging the norms of society and stuff like that. It's really like, wow, it takes a lot of courage.
And you also, you're a trans person in Singapore, out of all countries.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I'm like, how did you do that? And how do you keep doing that?
So
It's a very traditional place.
It is. So just for those audiences who don't know what transgender means. So by definition, transgender is basically the sex you were assigned at birth, like male or female based on the genitals that you have. Versus how you feel about yourself, like mentally, psychologically, doesn't align. That's what transgender means. So sometimes when we talk about, cisgender, transgender, the gender is just really more of an identity, what's inside, how you feel and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically the overview of it.
So when did you feel for the first time that it's not aligned, as you said?
Yeah, so the first feeling when I felt a bit off, I would say, was perhaps sometime in kindergarten.
That's early.
That's very early. For me, it's very early. So it's really like, sometimes it's like, wow, girls can wear dress. And back then as a male, it's like, I can't. But I think as I progress throughout, primary school, secondary school, and beyond, it's kind of, I start to question like, hey, when I look at, let's say, the opposite sex, right? I won't have the thoughts of like very sexual thoughts, but it's really more about there's this term I just found out. It's called gender envy. It's like I wish to wear this dress or this clothes, but I can't because society says that male cannot wear skirts, for example. You know?
Or heels.
Yeah, or heels, right? And fun fact, heels were designed for men in the old
I
times.
didn't know that.
Yeah, heels were designed for men during the times when they were butchering meat.
Okay.
So
you did your research.
I
clearly.
did. So it's like, you know how the floor is very messy, very
Yes,
wet in the market?
yes.
So heels were actually designed for men based on my research, okay?
So you realize that you want to be something different than you are actually, right, at that moment. But then how did you go through the journey? Like, when did you actually decide that, okay, I want to be brave enough and I want to start dressing differently, or I want to, you know, behave in a way how I feel is aligned with who I truly am?
Correct.
So when was that point?
So I think for me that discovery was, you know, I think at those, like before 6 years old, it was kind of like I felt something a bit off, but there wasn't a word to describe it, and there's not a lot of support and stuff like that. Over time, there's this thing I think back then called Yahoo Answers. So it was there on Yahoo Answers, and then not much throughout that time until perhaps say Reddit. I think that's where all the forums are more active in this conversation and stuff like that. So I think one of the things or a common misconception is a lot of times people say that, oh, it's a choice that we make to transition, and it's a very charged myth, because sometimes it's like, yes, it's a choice for us to take the steps to be better. For example, if one is diagnosed by a doctor that you are sick, right, you can choose to not take the medicine if you don't believe in medicine, or one can actually take the steps to become better and to be, you know, more conscious. Like one example I have, or I would say I'll use, is for me, I'm also diagnosed with dyslexia. Right. You know, it's sometimes dyslexic, basically, this is another definition, right? It's someone who somehow face some kind of learning difficulties. It's still a spectrum.
Yeah, but particularly I think with letters.
Yeah, some is with letters,
So
some
numbers.
is with writing, some is this. But most successful people, a lot of successful people we know today, like Sir Richard Branson, Lee Kuan Yew, they all have dyslexic as well. You know, and one thing I found out very similar in terms of my transition and dyslexic is that, you know, for dyslexic, you are now aware of your condition. You struggle in school, you can't, you do spelling, you like 10 words, right? You learn the first 5, you test the first 5, it's great. And then you learn the next 5, you test it and great, and you forgot the first 5.
Yeah.
And then if we are not aware of this condition, your parents will be like, you're stupid. It's just like, why you're not working hard enough, you're not enough practice. But we didn't know about this condition. So only through the education around, you know, Singapore and stuff, because of the initiative by Lee Kuan Yew and, you know, the founding founders, it's really like, oh, okay, let's go test it out. And then, hey, ho and behold, I have dyslexic, right? I was diagnosed with dyslexic. So now you have 2 choices, right? One, you can just accept this fact and just live life the way that, like, as if nothing happened, just, okay, I have this. Or we can go for specialized schools to teach me on the, let's say, how I can help myself through the dyslexic way of teaching, right? So very similarly in transition, it's the same thing. You are not diagnosed, for me, it's this thing called gender dysphoria. So it's like, I'm not very comfortable with, let's say, being a male or dress a certain way of how I perceive myself. And I cannot do anything about it, or I can do something about it to help myself, ease myself into society. So social transitioning can come in many different forms in terms of how you dress, your name change, how you want people to address you based on your pronouns. Those are some elements of social transitioning. Your parents.
That's the whole other conversation.
That's coming out, right? So parents is really just an optional kind of thing, because one can be socially changed. You know, those games like Sim 3 or some avatar game, you can be already a female. So that's like social, right? And then after that, it's optional for some to go through the medical transition as well. That includes hormones and surgery. Another misconception is people think that you must have both to be a trans person or transsexual, right? But that isn't true in today's context. So it's optional to choose. And why we say optional is sometimes, especially in Singapore, I'm very blessed because we actually do have the healthcare system to support us. So Singapore healthcare system actually supports people like myself in terms of voice feminization, in terms of voice training. How do we change our voice? Medication as well. And things like that.
And My question here is, and your work is a lot about helping other people to live life on their terms.
Yeah.
And you're like a walking example of that, clearly. I mean, you just do what you feel is right for you. And again, I just want to remind that Singapore is still a traditional society. And so I assume that some people probably were welcoming and maybe some others were not so welcoming when you start going through the social transitioning. So how do you deal with that? Like, what is your way maybe of dealing criticism or disapproval, or like you show up and maybe someone isn't very friendly? How do you deal with that?
I think the biggest criticism comes from family only.
Okay.
Not really
So
more of
strangers are actually more welcoming.
Strangers are very, very friendly.
Okay.
And I don't think this is a only me experience. I think a lot of trans people, but I do have to acknowledge this is a very privileged thing to experience. Yeah, but I think the biggest criticism comes from my own family. And I actually came out publicly first before I came out to my family.
Okay.
Yeah, just to get a sense of support and moral support. I think what's very important is the social space, the safe space. So I think, the question, I think this is a very helpful question for anyone watching this, going through some kind of self-doubt or self-esteem, of looking at ourselves. There's this analogy I like to share. It's called the house, the inside house and the outside house. So how I used to describe it is how we look outside. It's just like how the outside of a building might look like. It might look amazing, like a brand new renovated mansion, or it could be some old shed house, somewhere in the rural areas in the forest, perhaps, right? Very hot, very muddy and stuff, right? And then we have the inside house, which is how we want to design the furniture, the lightings, the color and stuff like that, right? So a lot of times we are trained or we are domesticated by our parents or society to kind of be like, we need to dress a certain way. We have to act a certain way. If not, you are outcast, you are queer, That's the outside house, right? And I used to focus a lot on that. My hair, the way I sound, the way I speak, the way I act, that was such a huge, huge, huge factor. But I've realized that you can never really satisfy anyone, especially your parents. I'm speaking from that.
There's a lot of wisdom and truth in that.
I'm speaking from that angle. So I kind of realized that at the end of the day, at the most lowest point in my life, if my inside house, meaning how I see myself, how I love myself, how I treat myself, this self-love and self-care, if this is not strong enough, then everything else will collapse. If someone's out there going to criticize you, if your inside house is beautiful, it's safe, it's warm, you don't really care what people say because it's my house.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the guiding principle I use today. Yeah, for myself.
Well, and you also, when I look at you, I mean, you look at least right now, I'm not sure how it was 5, 10, whatever years ago, but you look very much at peace with everything. You look very happy, very radiant, just very generous. It's what you said, like very abundant. And so whatever you were doing also with your mind to adjust your mind to this, clearly it's working. So I'm just curious also about the work that you do, right? So I know you run a company.
I do.
And you look very young. And I think I asked you this earlier. I mean, to me, you look very young when I look at you. So can you please tell me how old are you again?
So I just turned 24 this August.
Okay. And you have company for how many years?
I started the first one at the age of 12 years old, 11, 12 years old.
11. And what were you doing when you were 12, 11 years old?
That first company was called App Elite. That company was specializing in helping people create mobile apps and websites. And it went on to start teaching people how to create that using those drag and drop builders as well.
Well, you are clearly unusually entrepreneurial also, from a very young age, right? Despite whatever was happening in your own mind and also with dyslexia, as you mentioned today, which I didn't know about you. And so you went also on this professional journey when you very early went into business and building companies and educating other people. And now you work with people. What do you do right now?
So right now I am facilitating large events, right? And also doing coaching for my clients as well. I'm moving more towards the corporate side of things.
Okay.
Right. So that's professionally what I'm doing. Personally, I'm traveling around the world, discovering what it's mean to be me even more. Right. I think that's something that Asia can really give that opportunity as well. And it's so great. It's really so great because it's so affordable. It's really very affordable to start traveling, which most people think
It's not the true, most people say, right? Most people think
Yeah.
that it's actually very expensive. So what are your, I'm just curious, what are your tips for the affordable traveling?
Yeah, that's very true. Well, my tips, not sponsored, not sponsored. I use like Google Travel, Google
Okay.
Flights, right?
Google Flights,
So I
yeah.
can just check the pricing and
Mhm.
stuff
I do
like
the
that,
same, actually,
right?
yeah.
So, just see the pricing and stuff. And I love to buy one-way tickets.
Okay.
When I buy one-way tickets and I just go there, I would just stay as long as I can stay till the country needs to kick me out. And then I'm like, okay, where's next? I'm a person who loves mountains and nature. I'm not a beach person. So really, I do a lot of trips, especially solo bike trips. Like since I ride motorcycles and cars
And fly planes.
and fly
by the
planes
way.
like 5 years ago. Yeah. So that's something I'm exploring right now. But really this sense of adventure, this sense of, structure, some sense of structure in my life. That's what I realized I needed. But the ability to actually, can you actually survive out there in the wild with no one else to tell you what's right or what's wrong?
While honoring who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And that's the best part because, let alone traveling alone, but as a woman and as a trans person
Yes.
even, people is like, hey, where did you go? Is it safe? And then I hear the stories about, oh, I can't go. I still have curfew. Even at the age of 25, 30, I can't travel because I have work. So that kind of humbles me down a lot because of how much opportunity or how much abundance I have. But at the same time, I want to share with people that it's not really limited to your job. I know, we have commitments, we have responsibilities, but it's really just that moment of I buy a ticket and let's say I buy a ticket in the morning and in the evening, I'm there already. And it's like, oh my God, I'm in another country in just less than 3-4 hours. It's so amazing. I think in Asia, we have such an opportunity to travel, around the region.
Absolutely.
In just a few hours,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I personally believe traveling is the best education because you fine-tune who you are and you also really understand what the world is.
That's right.
And so you find this inner truth.
And one thing I need to tell the audience is,
please,
we need more Asians to travel. Because when I go abroad to countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and we go to those like coffee meetup session and stuff, it's a lot of Westerners actually.
Yeah.
A lot of Westerners. The other Asian that you see the most is perhaps South Koreans.
Okay.
But not Singaporeans, not Malaysians, not even Thai. And I think, when I go for all these different meetups, right? And I come back to Singapore, I'm like, where are the meetups in Singapore? You don't have to travel out of another country just to be part of this whole experience. Just go by, like, let's say if you're in a big countries like Malaysia or Thailand, go to another state, another city, and just join those.
And meet people.
Yeah, and just meet people. And I think that's the first basic step or a first introduction to networking. And I think networking is a very powerful skill set, a high income skill set. Actually, no one talks about. So to me, it's really more about, you go to those meetup groups or Eventbrite, or there's one I used recently, I found out, it's called Nomad List.
Nomad List?
Nomad List,
Okay.
yeah. That's another one I kind of like. And you can just organize an event, people just come, and then you just say hi, right? That's it. Over a meal, over coffee, like that's it. But yeah, that's the basic thing that one can actually try and explore to meet new friends.
I love that. If I were to ask you, I mean, since you're Singaporean,
Yes.
right? So if I were to ask, and because you're Singaporean, you can say that, and you're like a representative of Singaporeans who are right now in early 20s. So sort of if you were talking maybe to your peers, your friends, so traveling, I understood. So, okay, big part is traveling.
Yeah.
Like, is there something else you would like to say that it would be nice to see more of that among people?
Aside from traveling, you mean? I think aside from traveling is to make sure that your finances are in place. I think that's one thing I didn't really do very proper, which is just, this mindset of I earn this money, I save this money, and I go and spend this money. But I think for the audiences, it's really more about, hey, you have some savings. Don't be so...
Have courage.
No, in Singapore, there's this slang, don't be so kiap siap, meaning don't save so much, just, set a budget, For me, I think about if you're going to live off like 1 month-ish or something, about $1,000 to 1,500 Singapore dollars could live a very nice life in Thailand, for example.
Yeah.
Very nice life. And that perhaps in our equivalent could be about 50% of our income. based on the average, right, of like about $2,000, $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
So if we save up for 3 months, let us try 1 month and stuff, go out there and explore. And I think we need more entrepreneurs. I think more female entrepreneurs, especially in the topics of mental health space, in the connection space. I think we are, I see, or there's this trend I realize is we need more connection, more genuine connection. Last time, I think way before COVID, it was a lot about agenda driven, like, hey, I'm meeting you for this business
Very
opportunity.
transactional.
Very transactional, you're right. But now I think it's more about, and people can sniff that.
Of course.
People
Everyone
really,
has a
really
nose for
sniff
this,
that.
of
So
course.
I think to me I think the message to answer your question is find a tool you can use to connect with people. For example, board games or personality tests. That's something that I used in the past to kind of make friends with people. Like, hey, I can read your birth chart, for example. Like just pick
Something
up
for fun.
something for fun, right?
Yes.
Let's pick this up, and it's a great icebreaker. It's a great networking tool. It's a great dating way, just to meet people and stuff. So yeah, just have fun, explore new hobbies, find people with the same interests. And I think, especially on your channel, I know so many amazing people. Reach out to them.
Like you. Guys, reach out to people on this channel. This is a great advice. They're all amazing guests.
Yeah, reach out to people, like the previous guests and all. They are my teachers and they are my friends now. Meeting people, asking them questions, and just really genuinely asking them, like really poke them, because sometimes when you send messages, it goes into the request list, so we don't see it. But here's a tip, right? Is you send them a message, just tell them who you are, where you see them from, okay, and then like their page, follow them, and comment on them. In notification, there's like 4 or 5 like prompts already. I think we will get your attention. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's a tip.
I think that's how we connected.
Yeah, I think that's how we did. So it's a way to kind of like, how do I get your attention?
Yes.
And the desire to really reach out and connect. Say, hey, I can be of service to you. Do you need any help? And if it's a no, great, move on, next one. If it's yes, great. Also, enjoying that process and stuff. Yeah.
Riley, thank you so much. I think that was truly, truly fascinating conversation today. So that was the abundant Riley with us in the studio. And Riley and I would love to hear from you guys. So let us know in the comments. I love the idea that she gave connecting with all YanaTV guests. You can reach out to them, absolutely. And I think you should be doing that. And please remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share this video with friends. When we share this with people around us, the conversations go deeper. And a very special thank you to the Muse Studio for hosting YanaTV. We love being here. And I see you next time. Your feet were very good.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just thinking, should I fix the shoe because something came out?
I don't see, no one's going to see that.
Okay, no one's going to see
that. So, but your feet were very good. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Okay.